What if the very thing you built to protect yourself is actually the thing keeping you trapped? Think about that for a second. Somewhere along the way, something hurt you. Maybe it was a relationship that ended badly, a moment of deep rejection, a loss you weren't prepared for. And in response to that pain, you did what any reasonable person would do. You built a wall. You pulled back, you closed off a little, you told yourself you'd be more careful next time. And it worked, at least on the surface. The sharp edges of life stopped cutting quite as deep. But here's what Michael Singer wants you to see in Chapter 12 of The Untethered Soul. Those walls didn't just keep pain out. They kept everything out. The flow, the aliveness, the very energy that was meant to move freely through you, it all got blocked. Taking down the walls isn't about being reckless or naive. It's about understanding what those walls actually cost you. And today, we're going to walk through exactly what Singer teaches in this chapter, where these walls come from, how they keep us stuck, and what it actually looks like to dismantle them from the inside out. Singer opens this chapter by asking us to look honestly at how we respond to pain. And the answer, for most of us, is the same. We close. Something happens that hurts us, and instead of letting that experience move through us, we contract around it. We decide, often unconsciously, that we are not going to let that happen again. So we build a wall. Now, this isn't a metaphor Singer uses loosely. He's pointing to something very real in our inner experience. There's an energetic quality to openness and closedness. When you feel safe and loved and at ease, your heart feels open. There's a warmth, a flow, a kind of receptivity to life. But when you've been hurt, especially repeatedly, something in you tightens. You stop letting things in quite as freely. You become more guarded, more defended, more strategic about what you allow yourself to feel. And Singer's point is that this is a learned response, not a natural one. The natural state of consciousness is openness. It's flow. The walls are something we constructed. We built them out of past experiences, out of fear, out of a very understandable desire to not feel that pain again. And the critical insight he offers here is that every wall you've ever built started with a single moment where you decided that a particular feeling was too much to bear. That decision, that moment of resistance, became the first brick. Here's where Singer gets really honest with us, and it's worth sitting with. He says that these walls feel like protection, but what they're actually doing is blocking the natural flow of energy through your being. And when that flow gets blocked, it doesn't just mean you feel less pain, it means you feel less of everything. Less joy, less connection, less aliveness. Think of it like a river. When water flows freely, it's clear and moving and full of life. But when you build a dam, the water behind it becomes stagnant, it stops moving. And over time, what was meant to flow becomes something that festers. Singer uses the idea of energy centers, what some traditions call chakras, but he's not being esoteric here. He's pointing to something you can actually observe in your own experience. When you're around someone you completely trust and love, you feel open. Things move freely inside you. But when you're in a situation that triggers an old wound, you feel yourself close. You feel that familiar tightening. And in that closed state, you're not fully present. You're not fully alive to the moment. You're managing. And the tragedy he wants us to see is that we've gotten so used to managing that we've forgotten what it feels like to simply be open. The walls that were meant to protect you from pain have quietly become the very thing keeping you from the fullness of life. So how exactly do these walls stay up? Singer explains that the walls are not a one-time construction. They require constant maintenance, and that maintenance comes in the form of resistance. Every time a thought arises that you don't want to think and you push it away, you're reinforcing the wall. Every time an emotion surfaces that feels uncomfortable and you distract yourself or numb it or argue with it, you're reinforcing the wall. Every time a situation arises that reminds you of an old wound and you flinch away from it, you're adding another layer. Resistance is the mortar that holds the bricks together. And here's the thing about resistance that Singer wants us to understand. It takes energy, enormous amounts of energy. Think about how exhausting it is to avoid certain topics, to manage certain emotions, to keep certain memories from surfacing. You've been doing this work constantly, most of it below your conscious awareness. The walls aren't passive structures. They are active, ongoing projects that your psyche is pouring energy into every single day. And this is what makes taking down the walls not just a spiritual idea, but a practical one. Every ounce of energy that's currently going into maintaining your defenses could instead be flowing freely through your life. Singer isn't asking you to be vulnerable in some performative way. He's pointing out that the defended life is an exhausting life, and that there is another way. This is the heart of what Singer is asking of us in this chapter. He's asking for courage. Not the courage to do something dramatic, but the much quieter and far more difficult courage to stop defending, to stay open when everything in you wants to close. And he's clear that this is not easy. When you've been hurt, when you've experienced real pain, the instinct to close is powerful. It's primal. Your whole system is wired to protect you from experiencing that again. So Singer doesn't dismiss the difficulty, he acknowledges it, but he also asks you to consider what you're actually defending against. Because when you trace it back, when you really look at what's underneath the wall, what you find is not a threat. What you find is a feeling, a memory, an old experience that is not, in this moment, actually happening. The wall you built in response to something that happened years ago is still running, still consuming energy, still shaping how you engage with everything in your present life. True spiritual freedom, Singer says, means developing the willingness to remain open regardless of what arises inside you, not to fix it, not to change it, not to resolve it, but simply to let it be there, to let it move through you, and to trust that you will not be destroyed by a feeling. That trust is where taking down the walls truly begins. So what does it actually look like in practice? Singer offers something beautifully simple. When something arises, a painful emotion, a difficult thought, a triggering situation, instead of contracting around it, you relax. You consciously, deliberately choose to release the tension rather than grip it tighter. You let the experience be there without fighting it. And you notice that it moves. This is the key insight. Experiences that are allowed to be there, that are not resisted, that are not pushed away, they naturally flow through you and complete themselves. It's only when we resist them, when we grab onto them and wrestle with them, that they get lodged inside us and become part of the wall. Singer describes this as learning to let go at the seat of the self. From that deeper place of awareness, the place that is watching all of this happen, you have the capacity to simply observe an experience arising, allow it to be there fully, and then watch it pass. You don't have to carry it. You don't have to build a structure around it. Taking down the walls is really about this ongoing practice of releasing rather than gripping, of opening rather than closing, of trusting that you are larger than any experience that passes through you. And the more you practice this, the more you begin to discover what Singer calls the untethered soul, a version of yourself that is no longer defined by its defenses, no longer shaped by its wounds, but simply open, present, and free. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit with this chapter today. This one goes deep, and it asks something real of us. I'd love to know, what's one wall you can feel in yourself right now, and what do you think is on the other side of it if you were willing to let it come down? Drop that in the comments. I think this conversation is worth having. If this resonated with you and you want to keep going through the Untethered Soul chapter by chapter, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. There's a lot more of Singer's wisdom to explore together.